Check, check, 1, 2. Test, 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 test. Check, check. Check, check, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Test, 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 test. Check, check. Test, test, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Test, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2. Check, 1, 2. Test, 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 test. Check, check. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, 1, 2. Test 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test, test. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Check, check, check. There. That's better. How about that? Check, check, 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, hello. Check, check, 1, 2. Testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Hello, hello. Check, check, check. Test. Check, testing 1, 2, 1, 2. Okay. That's what Yes, I am, yeah. Just giving you the warning, yeah.
I don't even want.
Yeah, no, that's what we do. And it's make.
No, I think we have. Good afternoon. Somebody did. There we go.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you. Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the Deputy Chancellor Provost Candidate Forums. My name is Aaron Brown. I'm Vice Chancellor of Business and Financial Services and also Chair of the Search Committee and today's facilitator. As part of the district-wide search process, each of our colleges is hosting open forums with the 3 finalists for this very important leadership position. These forums are being live streamed as well for those who cannot attend and still want to hear what the candidates have to say. After an extensive nationwide search process facilitated by the Association of Community College Trustees, the RCCD Search Committee carefully screened 40 applicants, conducted interviews, and then selected the 3 finalists for you to meet. In addition to these forums, the finalists will be meeting with constituency group leaders and the Chancellor's Cabinet to ensure a broad and inclusive process that reflects the voices of our entire community. Your participation is essential. The Chancellor will be looking at your feedback forms prior to conducting the final interviews, and we'll take them very, very seriously. So with that, thank you for being here and for actively engaging in this process. And with that, I'll turn it over to Graciela from HR.
Okay, how's Riverside doing today? That's right, it's Friday. Well, it's good to see you all. Thank you so much for taking time out of your schedule and coming to the public forum today. We appreciate you participating. So before we formally welcome our candidate to Riverside City College, let me take a minute to review the ground rules for the public forum today. We will ask the candidate to provide brief opening remarks, roughly about 3 to 4 minutes. We do have 2 general questions that we've prepared to help facilitate the session. If you would like to ask a question, please write your question on a note card and one of our room facilitators will bring it up to the stage. We have Danielle Sanders and also Jonica Escobar who would pick up those cards and bring them up. 5 minutes before the end of the session, we'll ask our candidate to provide brief closing remarks. Also, when you entered the room, a public comment form was given to you. It does have the candidate's bio on one side, which you can read upon. And on the other side, it does have a space for you to be able to provide and write feedback. If you could please ensure that you hand the form to one of our room facilitators before you leave today. Unfortunately, we're unable to accept any of these forms after the forum has concluded. I do want to stress the importance of these forms being collected as they will be collected and placed in a confidential sealed envelope and delivered straight to the Chancellor so he can read each one of them and take it into consideration while making this important decision. And with that, I'd like to go ahead and turn it back over to Vice Chancellor Brown so he can introduce our candidate.
Okay, so Dr. Marilyn Flores is a seasoned educational leader with over 25 years of experience in California's community college system. She has served as Superintendent President of Rio Hondo College, Interim President of Santa Ana College, and Vice President of Academic Affairs at Santiago Canyon College. Her leadership is marked by a commitment to equity, student success, and community engagement, including the successful passage of a $442 million bond and the establishment of a campus police department. She's a proud first-generation college student and second language learner. Dr. Flores holds a PhD in institutional leadership and policy studies from UC Riverside. And with that, let's welcome her to the microphone.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Riverside City College, RCC. It just gives me a warmth in my heart to be back here again. As Aaron was sharing my background, I'm a first-generation college student, second language learner, raised by a single mother, the youngest of 3, and the first to begin an academic journey in obtaining my bachelor's, my master's, and my PhD from right down the street, UCR. I was a fifth grade bilingual teacher, so I've actually have 30 years within the educational system, 5 years in K-12, and the remaining 25 years in the community college system. And I really, really give credit to Riverside City College. It's where I began my journey. It's where I fell in love with the community college system. I started here as the director of Gear Up many, many years ago, and moved up to an associate dean, to a dean, and then later continued upward mobility. And I really give credit to RCCD for that. It really taught me humility, compassion, and as I mentioned before, made me fall in love with the California Community College system and what we do and how we serve our students. One part of my story is that I say that I wish I could say I was a California Community College product, and I wasn't, unfortunately. And I say unfortunately because I was not aware of the California Community College system. I did not find out about the system because when I was in high school, the community college down the street, the counselors will refer to it as Harbor High. And I always thought it was a continuation school. And that really showed me the devalue that unfortunately at the time was being placed on the community college system. So, ironically, I applied for the UCs because that's all I knew I thought existed. And luckily I was blessed to have continued in my academia. But when I came to Riverside as the director of Gear Up, I immediately fell in love with what we do, our mission, our purpose, and the wraparound services and the holistic approach we take into elevating our community for both social and economic upward mobility. I can tell you that I'm so proud of the system that my own two boys told them, don't apply to UC, don't apply to Cal State, don't apply to private, you will start at a California Community College. And both have. One's in his first year, the other one transferred to Utah Valley University and just recently finished his bachelor's degree. And I say that because that's how much I believe in the system. And so I hope that today you learn a little bit more about me and my experience and what I bring to the table and my journey. But know that I'm ever grateful. And again, it's a full circle for me today. And it warms my heart to be back here and see the changes and everything that I remember, the vision of this institution as well as the district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Martinez Flores. So these questions are coming in, so we'll go ahead and get started with our first question. So the first question is, apprenticeship is part of Vision 2030. RCC has robust apprenticeship programs in several pathways. How have you promoted the development, implementation, expansion, and maintenance of apprenticeship programs? And if you could speak on your experience at Rio Hondo College as well.
Okay, great. I can actually go back to before Rio Hondo College. At Rancho Santiago Community College District, I was the Vice President of Academic Affairs. And I can tell you that right now, Rancho is the one that's leading the demonstration project model for the apprenticeship program. And I do have to give myself credit and the Dean of Career Workforce Education. We did a tremendous amount of lifting. We met with all of the trades, all of the unions. We met with pipe fitters. We met with carpentry. We met with them collectively to figure out ways in which we can provide opportunities to our students. When I was at Rancho Santiago Community College District, we had, I want to say, 4 apprenticeships. By the time that I left, we tripled it and created those opportunities for our students to make fair living wages and to join the trades. And that's what the State Chancellor's Office now has deemed as a demonstration model. So I take great pride in that because I know that without the dean that's there right now still, who's leading the efforts, and myself, we had to do a lot of negotiating, a lot of understanding and working with the faculty about the skill sets needed, about implementing credit for prior learning, about allowing individuals to come into the workforce through the trades and through the unions, and then eventually even coming up with the pre-apprenticeship programs that will give them that opportunity. At Rio Hondo, there was 4 apprenticeships there, and by the time that I left, we had doubled that in size and currently still, and again, working with the pipe fitters and carpentry as well, surveying, GIS, and I can't remember the rest of them. Oh, and water and the plumbers. And so it's such a valuable component to education and academia to be able to assist the community and to get into these high-paying jobs, highly skilled and highly technical. The other is it gives us an opportunity to provide students with the learning environment, with the lab of the state-of-the-art and equipment that they'll actually be using. And I say that because one of the most recent agreements that we had with the pipe fitters is they developed this amazing training institution. And instead of us having to create a laboratory environment, the students get to take the classes at the apprenticeship site, and they get to work with the equipment that they will be working with. Likewise, the pre-apprenticeship over an apprenticeship that they started over at Rancho for child development. Now it's moving into a different field. And so looking at the different opportunities that we can create in other areas beyond just the trades, because sometimes you can't get students into the apprenticeships if they're not part of the unions. And so we need to create additional hybrid kind of formats that model the apprenticeship model so that we can get students into the workforce that want to go into some of these apprenticeships.
Okay, thank you. So our next question is, how would you help unite the district's 3 colleges? And this is specifically asking between the classes of classified professionals, faculty, and management.
How would I unite them?
How would you help unite or
Oh.
bring them together?
So I've been grappling with the question on the position itself, and I was mentioning it, that it's like a quasi, right? I'm not the chancellor, and I'm not the president, so I'm kind of in the middle. So it's going to be adjusting, because while I've been a president at a college, I know my role in uniting. When I've been a superintendent president, similar to a chancellor that reports to a board, I have a different role as well. So I'm going to have to figure that out in the sense of working closely with the college presidents and the constituency groups. But strategies that I've used in the past have been to have one-on-one meetings with faculty leadership, classified leadership, student leadership, and management leadership. That's something I've always done when I was the president over at Santa Ana and as superintendent president of Rio Hondo College. And what that does is it opens up the opportunity to communicate and to listen. And I mentioned this earlier that, we used to say things like see something, say something when we were dealing with issues related to security. And I tell everybody, I can't be everywhere at all times. So if you see something, I probably don't know it's happening. If you have a concern, if the classified had a concern over something, please give me the opportunity to understand, seek understanding, and so that we can work together. And so an example that I can tell you is at Rio Hondo College, they used to call the professional development committee Flex Committee. And it was very, very focused on just flex. And when I arrived there, I had a college-wide convocation. And people were confused. And I said, can you explain to me why people are confused? And they said, no, usually at the beginning of the year, the superintendent comes and goes over the budget, and we all fall asleep, and nobody does anything. And so what do you mean that we're all going to meet together? And so the concept became of these college-wide professional development days for everyone to bring together classified faculty, staff, and student leadership. As we change that, having to work a lot with the bargaining units to have these conversations, it was just amazing. I didn't think it was going to turn out this well, but it did. And we did a college-wide professional development on appreciative inquiry. So imagine we're all in the same room talking about appreciative inquiry. And so you have your math faculty talking in a group, and they're talking about their numbers for success in college level math and how there's huge disparities amongst the instructor. They had challenges because they didn't have a common assessment. And so they started talking about this through an appreciative inquiry. Like, okay, what are we doing right? What are we doing right? Where are we having success? What are we doing in that math class that has such a high success rate? So they had these conversations, and then they had to leave and go through the exercise of appreciative inquiry to come up with positive solutions. So not a deficit mindset, but an appreciative inquiry mindset. And this was also happening with the groundskeepers. So they went and they met presented the same concept, and they sat and they talked about what they appreciated. Well, we do a great job at this, and we do a great job at that. And, this offsite, we're not doing so great over there, And they had a conversation about what are we doing good where? And how do we take that good to the places that we're not servicing? And so it was just, the feedback that I got was, you brought us all together and didn't disenfranchise. It wasn't just about only faculty training, and then classified would be separate. And a lot of the people that were never there, that want to learn about the status of the college, that want to learn what their role is, really truly appreciate it. So that's the one strategy that I've used, and hopefully something that can come to fruition, that you bring everybody to the table to talk about the same things. Everybody needs to know what the budget looks like. Everybody needs updates from every single area, no matter what your role is at the college. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll move on to our next question. So what is your experience with 10+1 committees that are faculty purview and address areas of faculty rights and responsibilities, but may need administrative support?
That +1 will always get you, is what I know. 10+1 academic freedom, you eat, leave, and breathe it every day. Management has right of assignment, but beyond that, the academic senate has purview over a lot. The curriculum, rightfully so, they're the discipline experts. Grading, rightfully so, they're the ones that are the only ones that are able to give grades and submit grades. And so I've had experience from being on the curriculum committee, which I love. I know I'm a nerd, a curriculum nerd, and I'm looking over there at Kelly because she knows that I'm a total curriculum nerd, and I don't know why I like it. But I've been involved with curriculum, with my background in academic affairs, with all of the new unfunded legislation that's coming down, AB 1705, and every acronym that to mankind that's really impacting the classrooms. That is 10+1. That falls, and in some areas, it also falls on the faculty union to be bargained because some of the changes that we're having to do. So, like I said, I have standing meetings with academic senate all the time and their exec. I work closely with them with anything that touches a 10+1. And then if that +1, if we think it's a +1, we'll sit down and have really good conversations on that. But I would say that that's an area that I have probably the most experience in, just because I came from the academic affairs background and as a dean of academics area.
Thank you. So this next question asks, what is your strategy in working with various community groups to address Riverside Community College District and student needs?
So again, going back to when I started here at Riverside City College, I always wanted to focus on that word that we were community colleges, because you need to be invested in the community you're working in. Here at Riverside City College, I can't even think how many committees I was not on in the community, but I really believed in that. And I was very much a part of Latino Network. I founded the Latino Network Leadership Institute that worked with the Riverside students, that worked with UCR students. And I'm happy to say that I'll be back in November to be one of their speakers. So it'll be, again, full circle. Concilio Child Development Center, I was a part of that, opening up that center. And I was very much involved with the Cesar Chavez Project. I'm trying to think of everything, of Riverside Community Health Foundation. And all of that is important because it impacts the work that we do at the college. If we don't make connections in the community, we're disenfranchising the community. And you really want to be out there developing these partnerships, because they also can leverage funding, they can leverage scholarship opportunities, and it allows for the community to see themselves in college and to see people that look like them, to see successful individuals. So that's a key thing that I've always done. Wherever I'm at, I will be involved with the community, making sure that we're out there, that they know who the colleges are, who the district is, what we have to offer, and how we will be there for the community.
Okay, thank you. So we're moving on to our next question. So the question asks, why RCCD? Why now? What is it about Riverside City College and the district that draws you to this particular position?
So again, it's a full circle, and I give credit to this district for creating this opportunity for me. It's not creating this opportunity, but creating my trajectory. You know, I started here and I worked my way. I've learned a lot from different governing bodies here at Riverside. And as I mentioned, when I saw this position, it intrigued me because, again, it's quasi, right? You're not the chancellor, so I don't have to report to a board, and I'm not the president, but I'm there to facilitate and support. And I thought about it as I read it, because I was a little bit confused in the beginning about what exactly is it. But I thought about what an interesting model and how nice it would have been when I was a president to have had an additional individual at the district office that was kind of the mediator and the facilitator between myself and the chancellor. And I could see how that is, and that's the way that I see this position. I will be more of a facilitator, mediator, supporter, helping the presidents meet with their constituency groups, having discussions, listening. And that's something that I really do take pride in, and individuals have complimented me on: the ability to build teams, the ability to listen, the ability to negotiate and to come to agreements. And so that's why now, and why here. And again, it would be full circle for me, and it makes sense in my trajectory right now. Just not quite ready to be a chancellor of a large district. And so this gives me that middle area.
Thank you. Okay, so we know you mentioned you've worked here at Riverside City College, and you were also worked at Rio Hondo. So could you share with us what classified professionals, faculty, or just the community at large would say about you?
They would say I'm funny, humble, transparent, that I operate with integrity, ethical, sometimes to my own fault. I am an individual that, you know, I tell students a lot in leadership academies that sometimes we have to make really tough decisions, and they could destroy you. And if they do, it's okay, as long as you can look yourself in the mirror and say, I would do that all over again. And people know that about me. I've experienced that at multiple institutions. I do operate with integrity, and sometimes to my own fault, but I really believe that we have so much hate in this world and so much negativity that, you know, we need to focus on what we're here for, and that's student success. We need to be there for students. We need to provide them with wraparound services. We need to make sure that we don't let a negative narrative dominate us, and continue to do the work that the California Community College mission is, and which is why I fell in love with it, which is to provide access. You know, we talk about Vision 2030. You know, we're here for equity, for access, equity for success, equity for support, and we need to stay on that trajectory. So I think that's what the classified would say. They will also tell you that the one compliment I get a lot is, which I don't know how to take that, but they say, wow, you're normal. And I'm always like, okay, is that good or bad? But I really take pride in, I call it squashing the hierarchy, right? We're in this together. And so a lot of things that I would do to have good relationships with all constituency groups is I would do at both Santa Ana and at Rio Hondo, I do a cafecito book club, and we read a book. The last time we read Leading with Dignity, we've read How to Be an Anti-Racist, and everybody's invited. It's via Zoom, we have coffee, we talk about a chapter. I tell everybody, be as humble as you want to be, share as much as you do or don't. And through those relationship building, people hearing, we get to tell our stories of who we are, our backgrounds, our experiences, how that impacts our students. And it's just been a really good relationship. And the classified and the faculty have always just said, you know what, thank you for doing this. That's when they say, you're really normal. And, you know, I can't believe you shared that with us. And I'm an open book, you know, whether good or bad or ugly, we all are made up somehow, somewhere, and it makes us who we are, and it informs our decisions. And so I think a lot of times I want people to understand my framework, where I'm coming from, and that know that I'm listening too, because we all have different experiences.
Okay, thank you. So this card has a statement followed by a question. Okay. So senior citizens in the community have limited access to community classes. In fact, in spring 2026, if you look at the catalog, you'll only find one page. The question is, What would you do different to expand classes for senior citizens in the community?
That's a good question because I remember many years ago, I was here in 2001. I was here for more than 10 years. We did have a pretty robust community, senior citizen community center. I remember it was over there by all those stairs. First, I would want to know what is the need. So I think to start off with is working with the senior citizen community centers, kind of survey and get a sense of what are they wanting to do? Do they want art? Do they want yoga? Do they want really getting a sense for, what do they want? And then of course, working with the department for adult education or senior citizen education to try to provide those courses at an affordable cost because these are our seniors. These are members of our active community. They're taxpayers, they pay for our salaries. But I think before even going into saying, we're going to go offer this, we're going to increase, we need to know what it is that's in demand. We need to know what they need, what they want, because we know that active seniors make active citizens. And so I would definitely want to make sure that we assess before we start just throwing classes and hiring instructors. So we want to make sure that we're intentional and that we get input from the community. So working with the local organizations, the county boards of education, the K-12s to find out what some of their seniors' parents or senior grandparents, are interested in. So really try to gather as much information to provide a direction and a plan where you can phase it in and grow the program.
Thank you, Dr. Martinez Flores. So we discussed senior citizens. Okay, so this next card discusses parenting students. Okay, the question asks, given that 1 out of 5 students are parenting students, what policies do you plan on advancing to support this student group at Riverside City College, Moreno Valley College, and Norco College?
So again, my quasi hat, that is the president's purview, right? Based upon the chancellor's and the board's goals and so forth. Well, I would definitely work with the presidents to support and identify their needs. I will tell you that the Child Development Center is near and dear to my heart, as that's kind of my background, and I've taught child development courses in the past. But I think it's very difficult to sustain some of these parenting programs, but you can do it. At Rio Hondo College, we started off with annual augmentation of the budget of $500,000 every year. And the board asked me right when I got there, we cannot continue to augment the Child Development Center. When I was here at Riverside, unfortunately, we had a project over at Alvord, I think, and it wasn't sustainable. And it broke my heart. It was not a sustainable model. So again, like I said, I learned so much here in my trajectory, my journey, things that work, things that don't work. At Rio Hondo College, we were able to garner additional grants, additional funding sources. We still, our number one priority, which I totally agree, it still should always be, is to first and foremost provide childcare for our students. Then you open it up to the public, but our students must come first. And I know that sometimes CBOs frown on that because they want to focus on generating revenue for those extra slots, but you can do it too where your students are first. So fast forward my 3 years there, the Child Development Center is now fully sustainable, and it was through identifying additional external resources, partnering with K-12s to help fund some of those programs. In addition to that, we utilize some of our basic needs dollars. You get creative, right? So you start to talk about braided funding. And a lot of times those students that were housing insecure, food insecure, were single parents. And so we were able to utilize that money to hold workshops on financial literacy, to provide them with additional opportunities, to do toy drives, to donate toys for Christmas. And so we did a lot by intertwining and braiding funding to make sure that our students with families were completely supported. But again, there are ways in which you could sustain early childhood development. It takes a lot of work, but it can be done. And you just have to look at the model and the costs and all of that. And I still think that it has to be first and foremost for your students, to have access to resources before you allot external individuals that generate revenue. I know that. I know Aaron's looking at me like that's not what CBOs want to hear, but it can work so long as you know you're sustainable. And it should not necessarily be a profit organization. It should be there to serve the students and the families.
Thank you. Okay, our next question asks, what would your game plan be for retaining classified professionals with the district through professional development and upward mobility?
So one thing that I just recently did over at Rio Hondo, as I mentioned, the flex committee that they had. The classified were very concerned and they felt that they didn't have a voice. Interesting enough, they did have a budget in HR specifically earmarked for them, but it was kind of like in isolation. And so we had a lot of conversations, again, with the academic senate and the classified. We just kind of sat down and just said, okay, what are you worried about? And so the academic senate felt that if they lost it, that they would not have input and hearsay for flex and all that. And I'm like, no, that's a 10+1 purview. We're not going to change that. So we ended up restructuring the entire committee and it became the professional development committee, and it had equal representation, management, classified, and the academic senate. And of course, within the purpose and the charge of the committee, we made sure that it clearly stated that flex is the purview of the academic senate when discussing in this committee. And so that really opened up an opportunity for the classified, and they felt heard. And then we started talking about succession planning. And so the other thing that happened was we had classified staff that were working out of class. And it was very weird. You would say, for example, there's a vacancy and we need help. And so we're going to have this clerk work 20% as an admin assistant 1. And the 80%, they'll get paid, as a clerk. And the classified came to me and said, they're taking advantage of us because it's not clear. It's getting blurred. I sit over there and they're giving me all these duties and they're not at the appropriate rate. And so some of them were clear, when I'm at this site, 50% of the time I'm doing this position. When I'm at this site, 50%. Okay, great. But it became very blurred. And then we had the problem that we had a retirement, a SERP, a supplemental retirement plan. And we lost a lot of knowledge that classified had. And we couldn't cross-train because then we had to pay for both people and it was out of class. And many people said, I'll do it for free. I really want to learn this. I want to be able to apply for the position. So we didn't have anything in place for succession planning. So what we did after a lot of conversations and looking at the budget, working with CBO, we made a rule. If you're going to work somebody out of class and it's not clear, you're going to pay them at the higher class. In addition to that, we worked with the union, we bargained to add professional development hours into their contract where they could, much like flex sort of, the classified would get 40, I can't remember what we landed at. I want to say it was 40 hours for the entire year where they could cross-train as part of succession planning. And they were really excited about that because before they wouldn't be given the opportunity. And it didn't have to be 100% of the time or 30% of the time, but it could be, I'm really, really interested in this job. I would like to spend a day over here as part of my 40 hours. And so that's some of the stuff that I've done with the classified to help with the succession planning. The other is I would tell you that one of the things that I've always done with any classified that report to me or any managers is I've always asked them on my first day, what are your short-term goals and what are your long-term goals? And I ask that because I want to make sure that I pay it forward as well and that I know what they want to do. So in some cases, I've sent, vice presidents to the Wheelhouse Institute for Aspiring CEOs because I know they want to go in that area. Or I've had classified staff, I've worked with them within the realm of collective bargaining, I'm looking over there at you. If they want to go back to get their master's, I'll work with them to figure out how we can do that. How can I support you? And again, this was a good example of individuals that I knew were interested in other positions, but just didn't know if they could do it. And so by adding these hours into their contract where they could kind of cross-train, it helped pass the knowledge as well as allow them to feel what the position's like, see that they were capable of it, so that in the future when a position did open up, so it was really heavily focused on succession planning and success for them and support.
Okay, thank you. So now that we discussed classified professionals, let's switch gears, talk about faculty. So the question asks, how do you plan to support faculty and funding professional development opportunities?
I don't think I've ever not have been very involved with professional development, as since day one for everybody. It's really critical and important for all professionals, which is why I really believe in the whole college-wide professional development. But faculty are critical because of the classroom, what's happening in the classroom, what we're instilling. And then, of course, we always have these mandates that come out of nowhere without support. And one thing that comes in mind is there was a question earlier at one of the other colleges that asked about like AI. And I think that's one area that with AI and the use of AI is definitely a 10+1. It's academics, faculty purview. But I think that AI is an excellent tool for teaching and learning. But I also think it could be a dangerous tool. And so I really think that we need to focus on things like that for professional development for faculty so that they understand both and then can make a decision. But at the same time, that same training, we need to give it to the students and we need to give it to the classified staff. Because both need to know, as a student, I need to know, how do I use this? Because that's the reality. AI is going to be out there. We need to prepare them for advanced technology. They need to know how to use it to benefit, but they also need to understand how it can get them in trouble. So they need to know what exactly the faculty know and what they're aware of. And the classified as well, because there's so many tools out there that you can use to make your job much easier. I am notorious for taking a document that looks boring, putting in a chat GPT, telling it, make me an infographic, add this logo, add these colors, voila, why not? That helps. It's a tool. It's a resource, right? So I'm always forward thinking for professional development. I know that faculty are critical. You have to have it. We're all ongoing learners. Things change, trends change, legislation change. Faculty need to have opportunities to talk amongst each other. They need opportunities for faculty inquiry groups. They need to have discussions about how do you assess, common assessment, what rubrics do you use, and really bounce ideas off each other so that they create this community of learners and teachers. So that's always been like number one. The last thing I've ever wanted to cut, even in hard times, has been professional development. And when I say professional development too, I mean it in the sense of authentic, intentional, and not I'm going to go fly to Hawaii to a conference and so forth. Sometimes they do have good ones though. But I mean it as an opportunity for not only to learn from experts, but to learn from each other. And I find that a lot of times when you do your own internal professional developments with your own experts, or even just provide space to have conversations about teaching and learning, those are just equally as important as to attend a conference that are critical. Sometimes we have the guided pathways, which are very important as we continue to move in that direction. So yes, it's a top priority. And I will continue to support the colleges on that.
Thank you. Since you began the search process, what have you learned about our colleges and the district as a whole?
That's funny that you say that, because some of the questions that I've been asked are about the budget. What do you think about the budget and breaking it up on 3 colleges and the allocations? And I'm like, those are the same questions we were asking back in 2001. And I was asking Aaron, I said, is it still not fixed, But what I've learned is that there's a lot of wonderful opportunity right now in the district. I know that Riverside is looking at a technical education offsite to really look at our career and workforce education programs to really focus on that social and economic upward mobility. I know that Moreno Valley continues to have a thriving Ben Clark Training Center, And I know that Norco is looking to a Corona Center, which would be amazing because of that. The community would save on that commute. And there's a high need and high demand and a huge opportunity for growth out there. So I've learned a lot of that. I've also seen the good work and the structure that's changed in a lot of the collegial governance, and it seems to have been way better than back in the days when I was here, and it's evolved, and it seems to be more participatory and more collegial, at least from the documents that I could see. And I've also learned that the community is still very willing to be engaged and really wants to be a part of the district. I recently came to an event, and it was really nice to see people still asking, it's so great, we're doing this with Riverside. I know that they have a new superintendent at RUSD, and she introduced herself to me, and she was just gloating about looking forward, being able to make additional connections with the community. I think what has not changed, though, is Riverside Community College's district presence in the community. Moreno Valley is very present within their community, Norco as well. Each of the three colleges are very distinct, very different. They each have their own identity. They each serve a different community, and rightfully so. And so I think that's what has kind of remained stagnant. But what I've learned that has changed is this building, number one. There's a lot of new buildings, beautiful buildings, and there's a lot of growth, and there's a lot more to come. I know the district passed a pretty big bond, and that's already been earmarked, I would say, for projects that are much needed. And so I look forward to, if this possibility of this position, to assist the district with all of these efforts.
Okay, thank you. So now asking a little bit more about you. So could you explain your leadership style and how it will be a fit for Riverside Community College District, considering we have different stakeholders?
My leadership style is of a stewardship style, of leading with integrity, as I mentioned earlier. One of the frameworks that I really heavily rely on all the time as far as my leadership goes is Dr. Yoso's, a lot of you have probably heard of her community of cultural wealth. I think far too many times we focus our approaches on a deficit model, and we always say, we try to blame people like the student isn't succeeding because they don't have this, they don't have that, they don't have this, they don't have this, or they didn't do this at the K-12s, or they didn't, and it's always just this half-empty, deficit model. And Dr. Yoso's, model, I really find value in, and that's what I try to lead with, right? Which is what wealth, what capital does our community have? And so, some of the areas, she talks about linguistic capital, right? And we know that those that have linguistic capital happen to be sometimes language brokers, right? They're the ones that translate for their families, medical stuff. And so we know through research that being bilingual and bicultural and having to be that language broker and having that linguistic capital requires higher cognitive thinking skills. So we need to focus on that capital that our students bring in and engage and connect with them. Other ones are aspirational, right? Or I call it ganas. Our communities, our low-income communities, our communities of color are aspirational. They have ganas, they have grit, and we need to focus on that. We need to find ways in which to connect them with that. We need to engage them in the college. And we all know that athletes are always the most highly successful students because they have requirements, GPA requirements. That's their engagement, that's their passion. We need to do that as well at an institution to make sure our students are engaged in multiple ways at the college. And so my leadership style comes from that framework of what wealth does our community bring, and how can I lead to celebrate that wealth, tap into that wealth, and provide opportunities for our students to succeed, for our faculty to succeed, for our staff to succeed. And so I would say that that's the angle that I come from. I want to come in with I don't want to say Debbie Downer, but I want to come in with an idea that, this is the great that we have. How do we get, was that book Good to Greater? I can't remember the name of it. But, how do we elevate versus trying to find blame? And so I lead with that. I lead with passion, dedication, humility, transparency, integrity, and loyalty. You know, once I'm in a job and in a position, I will commit myself to that position and to make sure that we are meeting the mission, and that is to be there for the students. As long as we start with the students and we end with the students, we can do this.
Thank you. So looking ahead, what is your vision for how the Deputy Chancellor and Provost can best support student success, fiscal responsibility, and institutional growth in our district?
So again, the way that I see my role is to really be there for each college, a conduit, a mediator, a facilitator amongst the colleges to hear their voices, communicate that with the chancellor. Hopefully in turn that's communicated to the board. So that way we can ensure, again, listening, advocating at the state level, at the federal level. I've done a lot of that in the past years. If there's areas of need, I've been able to secure community-based funding through certain supervisors and congressional reps at Rio Hondo, and I also did that at Santa Ana College. And being out there and being the voice for the college. Presidents, and I know this, are super, super busy and can't be everywhere, and they really need to be on their sites in their community and as well as advocating, but there's just so much to do, and equally with the chancellor. So I think my role is to really make sure that I'm listening to all three colleges and seeing what I can do out there from a local, regional, and a national level, and which includes the good and bad and the ugly that we're going through right now, but to make sure that I'm advocating and that I'm working with all constituency groups, the presidents, and keeping in mind that the district has district goals, a strategic plan, for which each college has an aligned plan, and so my responsibility is to help support in any way that I can.
What was your motivation for entering administration?
So when I was a fifth grade bilingual teacher, I started teaching, and then I was also teaching non-credit. And so I was teaching non-credit, and then right when I got tenured, the principal tapped me and said, "You know, I think you'd make a really good administrator." And I said, "Well, you know, let me think about it." And so then they changed my title, and I became teacher on special assignment. It meant you're an administrator, but not getting to pay, right? And so I started doing that. And one day, I tell this story sometimes because everybody asks me that question. And a kindergarten teacher who happened to be a really good friend of mine calls me, and she's stuck on the freeway. And at that point in time, I was doing all the professional development for the site, and I was doing discipline fun for K-6 students. And I was doing home visits when needed. And so she says, you know, can you open up my classroom door? And I said, don't worry about it, I'll go over there. And so I walk in a room full of kindergartners, and they started crying. And they said, "It's Miss Martinez, it's Miss Martinez." And I'll never forget it because I was like, why are they crying? I'm like, it's okay, you're not in trouble. So then my friend gets there, and I said, what do you tell them? And they said, you better knock it off, or you're gonna go see Miss Martinez. And that day I said, I don't wanna be that administrator. And so as I was moving in that trajectory, I started to go back to, I talked to the principal and I said, you know, I'm getting this reputation and that's not who I want to be. I want students to celebrate me. And so at that point in time, you know, she's like, you know, we're going to be having a vice principal position. You'll oversee more curriculum, the stuff that you like, professional development. And so she sent me, she told me, go get your tier 1, tier 2 credential and so forth. And so that's kind of how I got my feet wet and realizing in my head, I always said, I want to be that administrator that students like, that faculty like, that, you know, as I said, that I'm normal and I'm not this hierarchical, very structural person, you know, that I squashed the hierarchy. And that's what got me into administration. And then it's just became, you know, having feedback from others and saying, you know, you can do this, you can do this. Why aren't you doing this yet? I'll never forget Jose Medina, who used to be a board member. Ever since I was here, he's like, you're going to be president someday. I'm like, I don't want to be a president. Why would I ever want to do that? That's like death, you know? And he kept saying, he just, oh, I see it, I see it, I see it. And, you know, next thing you know, I was a president over at Santa Ana and they became superintendent president. He's like, I told you, I told you. But, you know, having the support, but that classroom, that kindergarten classroom, man, I said, I don't want to be that administrator. So that's how I got into it.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that with us. Well, we do have more cards, but unfortunately we are at time. So we do want to thank you for answering the questions that you did get through specifically for Riverside City College.
Yes.
At this time, as we're nearing the end of the public forum, we would like to invite you to provide closing remarks in support of your candidacy for this position.
Thank you. So first of all, thank you for being here on a Friday at 2:00. Get ready to go on that freeway. So I want to thank you for that. I also want to say that there's a special place in my heart for this district, as I mentioned. It's been interesting going to all 3 colleges and just seeing the growth and opportunity out there. I have friends still out here, friends that I see, and every college I went to, it's like, oh my goodness. And so, you know, I really do look forward to potentially having the opportunity to do this. I think it's personally, the concept makes sense. I think it will be a learning curve and that this position is again, as I mentioned, quasi, but it really, it's what I like to do best. I like to lead I like to lead from behind. And when I say that, it doesn't mean I'm pushing you, okay? It means I like to lead from behind by providing you with support. And this position is very much that, being next to or letting people take, you know, the showcase, the star and everything, but really making sure that I'm there for people and providing support and resources and having those critical conversations about what's best for our students. And again, starting with the students and always ending with the students because that's what we're here for. I fell in love with the California Community College system because of Riverside City College and because of this district. And right now where I'm at in life, this position, like I said, in my career trajectory makes sense. And so I thank you. I hope that you take everything into consideration, my not so great jokes, my candor, and my normalness. And I appreciate your time. So thank you very much.
So thank you once again for joining us today and your thoughtful engagement in this forum. As a reminder, please fill out your feedback forms. We take them seriously. Dr. Isak takes it seriously. On behalf of the search committee, on behalf of the Chancellor, want to thank you again for your participation, and that concludes today's forum. Thank you.